My name is Wilson Rawlings. I'm 82 years old, and this is my 67th year as a volunteer for the London City Fire Department. I joined when I was 15 years old because my dad, Gus Rawlings, had been the past fire chief, and he would let me go to fires with him. I rode with my dad to fires, and he wouldn't let me get out of the vehicles, but I'd sit there and watch it, and that's when I decided I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. The first major fire I remember ever helping fight was the Laurel County Courthouse. It was my first major fire, but the fire that I remember the most was the gas explosion on East 4th Street. If it hadn't happened around 8:15 one night, I don't know how many people would have been injured or killed in that, because that was all storefronts. But everybody had gone home, and luckily we had only one injury, and that was a truck driver driving down East 4th Street with his window down when it blew and some flying glass hit him in the face. And that was the only injury we had in that fire. My dad was always a person that wanted to help other people, and I liked that idea. I liked helping other people also. And back then it was just the businessmen were the only firemen we had. We weren't paid fire department like we are now. And so it was hard to get people who would do that, get up at 2 o'clock in the morning on a zero night, go out, fight fire. During my years on the fire department, I started out as just a firefighter. I went through all the ranks. Then I became chief. I was chief for 5 years. I would like to stay in that position longer, but I had my own business I was trying to run, and I was neglecting my business and also neglecting the fire department, taking care of my business. And I just felt like it'd be better if I stepped down and let somebody who had more time to run the fire department. The one thing I did do, I got the city government to give me a little more money where I could buy more equipment, because when we started out we didn't have a whole lot of equipment. We wore a big old black rubber raincoat, a pair of rubber boots, and a pair of knit gloves that had been dipped in rubber, and that was our turnout gear, all except a helmet. We did get a helmet which was more plastic than it was anything else, and it was pretty dangerous. Now the NFPA requires a fireman to wear a certain type of gear, and it probably costs now $3,500 at least to just put the fireman in a protective turnout gear which he has to wear. Back then, $100 would probably been all we spent on it. I remember one thing: once you join the fire department, you got a pair of white coveralls. Why white, I don't know, but that's what you got. And I was so proud of mine, I'd wear them uptown. And Chief Phelps, who was my fire chief when I joined, had to tell me to not wear them uptown, but everybody'd look at you and you was on the fire department, and I really thought I was something, running up and down Main Street with a pair of white coveralls on. Back then, there was no rescue. The only thing the fire department did was hunt lost people, and sometimes if we had a drowning, we would go to a drowning. We didn't, no vehicle extrication. And the reason for that, back then the cars were made out of steel, and they didn't get pinned in like they do now. But we saw the need later on to establish a rescue squad, which we did, but it was separate from the fire department, but a lot of the fire members were members of the rescue squad. We were the only fire department, and one of the mayors decided that the city was paying all this money, and we were doing most of our fire calls outside the city limits, and he stopped the city fire department from going outside the city limits, and at that time the Laurel County Fire Department was formed. I remember right after the mayor said that no longer we'd have a fire outside we would respond to a fire outside the city limits. We had one on Whitley Street, on Town Hill. I think it's called George Street. There was a big 2-story home there. It caught on fire, and we sit at the city limits sign and watch it burn because we weren't allowed to go out of the city limits and there was no other fire department around. I would like to say this: when we started out, the city did not have the money, and we didn't get much money to run the fire department. But here in the last few years with Mayor Rubber, he has done more for the fire department in the last 5 to 7 years than was done in the first 75 years. But there's been more money available. We bought newer equipment. We bought the first aerial Bronto truck in the state of Kentucky. And it's 114 foot tall. And that helps us both with rescue and getting on top of buildings. I don't make many fires anymore. It's got to be really major. My physical condition doesn't let me make these fires, but I do try to come to the fire department every day and just get in the chief's hair, I guess is what you'd say, and everybody else. But the respect that all the men here give me is unbelievable. They call me Pap, and I guess I am their Pap. They're my kids. They are my family. And that's one thing that through the years, and especially here lately, we try to do is make this a family affair.